Well, we'll just go on for the day. Okay, so we're talking next week about different kinds of drugs and their impact on people. And, you know, you might think to yourself, either I'm never going to do this, so why does it matter? Or you might think, well, I already know everything I know about drugs, and you have no opinions about them. And some people think, oh, marijuana is okay, it's not that bad. Everybody has their own opinions about this already. But even if you have your own idea, you might be surprised with what you learn. Or if you know you're never going to try drugs, there could be people in your life that you care about who do. And you might need to know information to help convince them to stop doing this. Yeah, girl.
Will there be any in-class labs testing those drugs?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't really know what we can do with that. Nothing legal, I don't think.
Colorado. Do you do this with every class or not?
Yes, well, recently. Yeah. No, it's just because we've done it. It's only because we started anatomy just the past year, so that's why.
Sure.
No, but it's true. I mean, in my own life, I mean, I've had some people that I care about a lot who I've seen drugs have destroyed their lives. People have committed suicide that I care about. People have died in car accidents. People have lost their jobs. People have lost their marriages. People have been abused, beaten close to death. People that I know, I mean, these are people I know who I care about a lot. They've lost their scholarships to college. They've dropped out of high school. Drugs are terrible. I mean, I've had so many people I can see personally who just ruins their life. They're a different person they were before. I've known people who were brilliant, who could have been doctors, and they got into drugs, and now they can't do anything for themselves, can't even cook a meal on their own. They can't function. They have to live with their parents. They can't live by themselves because they can't do anything for themselves. And, you know, everybody thinks that, you know, if they try it once, they can stop. You know, nobody wants to become an addict. Everybody who is an addict nowadays doesn't want to be. You know, they didn't start that way. You know, they thought it was gonna be fun. And so when they tried this, they thought, well, I can stop whenever I want to. But then they can't. And everybody's that way. Drugs overpower you, and everybody thinks they're different, and that's why they get into them. But we're not. Everybody is the same. If you get into this, it's not going to end well. It never ends well with anybody. So I think it's important that, again, either you're going to be some way you will be impacted by drugs when you go to college. Either personally, you know, people, but it's everybody in some way will be impacted by drugs. If they haven't already, they will. So it's really important to know the facts, because I think there's so much information out there that's not true. I think you hear so much, especially with marijuana nowadays. There's so many things that are based on emotion or based on things that are propaganda that aren't actually based in reality, that it's important to know about. And the numbers, I mean, looking at just colleges, and not even, this is just for colleges per year. So every year, 2,000 people die just on college campuses for just alcohol, not anything else besides, just alcohol-related deaths. Almost 1 million assaults every year, 100,000 sexual assaults or rape. And these are all due just to alcohol. And that's only on colleges. So the number's a lot larger if you look at the general population. And it's only United States too, it's not worldwide. It's just the US colleges. If people start hard drugs when they're young, then they are 5 times more likely to die young. So they start taking drugs when they're teens, then they have a 5 times more likely chance to die when they're young. So I mentioned the numbers for colleges, but for the United States in general, for all adults, 88,000 people die per year from alcohol-related causes. And that could be overdosing, that could be an accident. And that's just for alcohol. Yeah.
Can that be like kidney, like?
Oh yeah, cirrhosis of the liver. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And alcohol is a poison, and it can destroy your organs. But for other drugs too, I mean, we haven't mentioned, there's so many other drugs out there too that kill per year. 47,000 opioid deaths per year, and 50,000 heroin deaths per year. That's just some of them. So there are many others that I haven't mentioned yet. But you get the idea that drugs kill millions of people. This is the United States right here. I've only mentioned a few of the drugs. So there are other drugs I haven't mentioned yet. And worldwide, millions of people die per year from drugs. So it's a huge problem. And I don't think people realize as much like the impact that it has. I better these ones down. And then I will, again, this is recorded on Zoom. I'll have to fix, I don't know about the sharing thing, but I want to just go on today. So, but at least the audio will be on Zoom. And I'll have notes too that you can go back and look at too. So I'll have and I'll have a study guide for you for this, for the final exam. So people, when they become addicts, again, like it starts because they think they can stop it if they want to. They think they have control over this. So they have the sense that they'll always be in control and that it will never be overpowered by the drug. But addiction causes powerful changes in the body, the brain, and behavior in the person. They become a different person. So when they take drugs, they become, if they become an addict, they are a shell of themselves. They are a different person. Their will isn't there anymore. They're not able to make choices like they used to. They don't have the stamina, the perseverance to make good choices. And so maybe the person who started could stop the drugs, but as they go on this path of taking drugs, they become weaker and they can't stop. And over time with addicts, the drug is the most important thing in their life. And it outweighs everything else in their life. So they end up losing everything that's valuable to them because the drug becomes the most valuable thing to them in their life. And so they lose their marriage, they lose their kids, they lose their house, they lose their money. They spend everything, all their time, all their money getting this drug. And that's what their life is around. A lot of people who are homeless are, not everybody, but a large percentage of people who are homeless are due some way to drugs. Now, it could be mental illness also is affecting this and other things, but most people lose everything because of drugs, and they've chosen that life. So why do people start? I mean, one reason why is just because, especially when you're college age students, you're wired to take risks, and taking risks can be good. Your brain rewards you for taking a risk. And that's why going to Six Flags is fun. Roller coasters are fun. Skydiving is fun because the body knows it's risky, but it rewards you for taking those risks. And that's how we grow. That's how taking a risk is, that's how we apply for a job. We go to college. We take hard courses in college. We do things that are difficult, but that's how we become a better person. So it's not so much taking a risk that's the bad thing. It's what kind of risk are you taking? And the brain doesn't discriminate between a good and a bad risk. And so it rewards you for both. So if you're going down 9 miles per hour down the highway, your brain rewards you for that, even though it's a bad idea. Your brain still tells you this is a good thing to do. And it's like, but you have to decide for yourself, what is a good risk and what's a bad risk. Some people are naturally born addicts. Their genes are such a way that they get a dopamine rush when they take a risk, and they crave that feeling. And so some people are just more prone to being addicts. It doesn't mean they're going to become an addict, but some people have to fight against it more than other people. So nobody is destined to be a certain way, but they definitely do have inclinations. Some people definitely are more prone to abusing alcohol or smoking. And they have to be more careful about that. Oh, it's still on here. It just got smaller. Yeah, everything is on. So again, taking a risk can be good or bad. You have to just ask yourself, well, what is a good risk and what's a bad risk to take? So there are risks you will take that are good for you, either having fun, like zip lining, for example, going on roller coasters, learning a new skill in class, having to go in front of class, making a speech, for example. Those are all experiences that can help you grow. But of course, there are other risks that are not good for you. Things like speeding in your car, drinking too much. Those are all risks that are harmful to you. But the brain rewards you for both of those kinds of risks. So write these ones down. Now, in these ones, you can paraphrase these ones. This is more things that I think is fine if you don't write out word for word what's on here. So you don't have to write word for what's on these ones. Okay, so now what about the ones who don't use drugs? Why don't they? Well, the biggest reason why people don't use drugs is because they have a goal. So people who have goals won't use drugs as like the ones who do, or the ones who don't have goals. Because people see that they have a certain goals they want to achieve, and then the drugs will not help them get to those places. And so people have academic goals. They want to keep their scholarship. They want to learn. They want to do all their tests. Athletic goals. They want to stay in the sports team. They want to perform at a high level. Career goals. They know they can't get a job if they have drugs. So they want to stay clean because of that. Or they want to achieve good grades in school so they can get a good job. Family, getting to heaven. So drugs have a moral component too. People understand that drugs are immoral too. And so drugs keep you away from heaven as well because you're choosing the path that goes against that. So whatever goals you have, drugs always make it harder to reach them. And for people who do use drugs, the main reason why people use drugs is they don't have those same goals. Many of them don't have any goals. I mean, their only goal is to have fun. And that's really what they want to do. They just want to enjoy life. They don't want to think about the future. They don't really want to achieve. They don't want to get a degree or look for jobs. Their main purpose, their main goal or passion is to just enjoy life, have fun with their friends, and not think any further than that. So that is the main reason why people use drugs, is they have no good reason not to. So there's a survey of people who do use drugs, who don't use drugs in college. And the most common answer for why they do use drugs is they have no reason not to. And the ones who don't use drugs, they have a reason not to. They have goals. So having goals is the primary reason why you don't use drugs. Having no goals, having no reason not to is the reason why people do get into drugs. But of course, there's a lot of things go into it too. That's not the only reason why. People expect drugs to make them feel better. People, they think that drugs will make them happy and have a good time. And so they have a positive expectation for the drugs. They will expect it to make them less stressed, help with their anxiety, make them more confident, make them more fun, make them more like themselves. So those are all reasons why people would start using drugs. But drugs don't always do what you want them to do. Drugs intensify the emotional state that you're in. So if you are in a bad emotional state, if you're depressed, drugs many times are going to intensify that, and they're going to make you feel more depressed. If you are feeling happy, though, drugs can intensify the happiness too. So drugs tend to intensify whatever mood that you're in. But the way that they work really depends a lot on the person's mindset and how they expect them to work. And there's a study that showed this. So what they did is they brought students to a bar and they gave half students a placebo. So they told them it was alcohol, really wasn't though. It was, I don't know what they gave them to taste like alcohol, but it wasn't alcohol. The other half did have alcohol. And they asked them after the party, did you have fun? And they had to rate their level of fun. And the amount of people, or the level of fun people had who had alcohol versus the ones who didn't, it was the same. And they asked them, did you have alcohol? The ones who had the placebo couldn't tell that they didn't have alcohol. They had no idea that it was a placebo. They assumed they had alcohol because they had fun. So people will tend to act a certain way, like especially in a bar situation. So when people are drinking, the one who isn't drinking tends to act like the ones who are drinking. they all have the same amount of fun because it's a group thing. It's not so much the alcohol that makes you feel a certain way, it's the people around you acting a certain way that makes you feel that way. And so your expectation also plays a role in it. So if you expect to have fun, you might have more fun. But it wasn't the alcohol itself that made them have a good time. It was the setting, the environment, the people around them. Another thing that is a big component for drugs is friends. 9 out of 10 people who start using drugs, it's from a friend that gives them that drug. But it's not so much peer pressure. I mean, it definitely plays a role in it, but even though it says that 9 out of 10 start from a friend, they weren't usually pressured into it. Some were, but most of them weren't pressured into it. They either asked for it, they were told about it. But peer pressure plays a small role, but not a big role in drug use. So the effects of addiction. So of course, physical health is a big component to it. Psychological help. A lot of people will use drugs to medicate depression or anxiety. They hope to cure their anxiety or their depression through drugs, but it only makes it harder, especially with anxiety. There's therapy that when you have PTSD or when you have some kind of anxiety, they tend to use exposure therapy. Like if you're afraid of spiders, what they would want to do is slowly expose you to that danger to show you that spiders are not that bad. So they might give you a picture of a spider to look at and then have you hold that picture of the spider, then give a toy spider to you to look at, and then have you hold that toy spider. Eventually bring in a spider in a cage and have you look at that and then hold the cage. And eventually the spider will be on your hand. And so it's incremental steps, but you are facing that danger in small amounts and your brain learns, I can handle this. I'm okay with this. But if you take drugs, then you don't learn how to cope with those things. Whether it's social pressures, like, being at a party, people feel like, well, they have to have alcohol to have fun or to be themselves. And if they don't take it, they don't really know what to do at the party. And this reinforces that. The more times you do that, the more it tells you that you have that to have fun. Spiritual health. And so, taking drugs is a sin. And so anytime you sin, it blocks you from your relationship with God. It blocks your pursuit of meaning and fulfillment. Drugs basically is a cloud over your soul. And it's hard to hear the voice of God and know what his will is for your life and what you should be doing. You lose a connection between you and God. It clouds your reason and clouds your judgment, but also clouds you hearing the voice of God. It keeps you from knowing the path in your life. And also social health. Drugs destroy families. They destroy your friendships. Because as addiction intensifies, the most important relationship in that person's life is the drug. And this could be for other things too. I mean, I'm talking about addictions of drugs, but it could be like gambling too. Gambling is also an addiction that can be very harmful to families. So the things I'm saying right here also can apply to things like gambling or other addictions too. But I'm just using drugs as an example. Intellectual health. So when you take drugs, your logic and reasoning break down. You're not able to think like you used to. You might make choices you don't usually make. Your impulses are hard to control. You become more like an animal. I mean, basically, animals can't control their instincts. Animals do whatever they feel like they have to do. But for humans, we are able to, feel certain impulses, but then decide not to do those things. But drugs make that harder to do. You lack that judgment. You lack that self-control. You aren't able to be a person that you want to be sometimes. Societal health. When you buy drugs, you are supporting drug cartels. These are, of course, alcohol is different, but any other kind of drug, it's illegal. And so it's supporting the black market, supporting these drug gangs that are inherently violent. They account for many of the world's murders. And so it's not just a matter of, hurting you, but by giving money to these gangs, you're also supporting the violence of those gangs too. So that would be going for marijuana, for heroin, for any kind of illegal drug. It supports the cartels. And again, you can always paraphrase whatever I'm saying on here. It's also hard to know how you'll respond to a certain drug. Everybody responds differently to drugs. And not just for things that are illegal, but also things like caffeine and alcohol, things that are legal drugs. People don't respond the same way to those things. Or things like Benadryl. Some people, when they take Benadryl, are actually hyper. Other people take Benadryl, they get really sleepy. So everybody responds differently to different kinds of drugs. And so it's hard to know what would happen to you before you take that specific drug, because you have enzymes in your bloodstream that are different from person to person. These enzymes reduce your drug levels, but there can be 80 different variants of every enzyme in your body. And so based on your genes, based on your enzymes, drugs can affect you in different ways. And that's also how you're feeling. So based on your emotions, drugs can affect you in a wide variety of ways. That would vary from person to person. And also having health conditions, whether it's the flu or chronic conditions, will change how you react to a drug as well. Of course, genetic differences, how your genes are arranged, your expectations of the drug, and then the setting that you take the drug in, whether it's at a party, by yourself, that will also affect how the drug works. So there's a wide variety of factors, and it becomes unpredictable. It's not always easy to know how a drug is going to affect you until you take it. Let me skip. So this next part's about caffeine. I'm going to skip that for right now. I might come back to it later if we get a chance to. I want to go on. Let's see. Okay, so we'll start with marijuana today. I have time to start that. So there's different kinds of plants. There's not just one kind of marijuana plant. There's a wide variety of species, but these are some of the most common ones. Sativa, indica. Does anybody know how these affect a person? The difference between indica and sativa? Oh, that's good. That's encouraging. Oh, wow. Wow. So sativa, it makes you more anxious. So some people who take this get anxiety attacks or panic attacks. Some people get heart attacks when they take sativa. It's fairly common. People don't hear about this, but it's fairly common to get heart attacks when you first take marijuana, especially sativa. It can make you feel very panicky. You can feel like you're in danger. The people around you might feel like that they're your enemies and they're about to kill you. I mean, you can have it. It can be very unpleasant. But people take sativa if they want to be productive and still do something while they're taking this. They do this to be more creative. So if they want to write something, for example, or make an artwork, then sativa supposedly helps them do that. Indica is more what you think about with marijuana, like more the stoner, where it makes you sleepy, it makes you mellow out, it makes you just sit down on a couch and do nothing. And so that would be, so people would take indica more like at nighttime when they want to relax, sativa more during the daytime if they want to do things. And ruderalis would be a hybrid. It's a combination of the two. But it's not always 5 leaves. I know people think that they're 5 leaves, and not all of them are. There's a wide variety of types of leaves and numbers of leaves that are in the plants. The chemical that's in marijuana that makes these changes is THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. And so that's a psychoactive ingredient. That's what makes your mind change, your habits change.
So I was gonna say, What is the type that you can take that doesn't make you high?
Yeah, CBD.
Uh,
Yeah.
CBD.
Yeah, CBD. Yeah. So CBD also comes from marijuana. But CBD will not make you high. So CBD, you could morally take CBD because it doesn't change your mind. Does it? Well, there's a lot of, it's very new. And so there's a lot of things that we don't know yet about CBD. But one thing it has been shown to do is help with seizures, especially childhood seizures. That has been shown to be effective, at least for some people. Some people take CBD to help go to sleep. So how much does it help with going to sleep, or how much with help with anxiety? It's up for debate. Again, it's only been a few years they started using CBD. So it's not really easy to know at this point how much it's helping, but that's what people use it for generally. So a typical joint, you can see right here. So basically, it's just it leaves in a paper roll. It's 100 milligrams of THC. A dab pen, about twice that to 3 times that.
I have one question. So
You need to see this, by the way. This is like,
these two are the same. 22. Which one of these neurons is the myelin sheath in the central nervous system? What myelin sheath?
Oh, but this is peripheral nervous system, and that's central nervous system. So there's 2 different things: central and then peripheral. Central and then peripheral.
Okay.
You may know what a dab pen is. Yeah, so it's a vape, but you put THC in it.
Well, you're saying I need to listen to this.
Now, so there's a lot of THC in a dab pen. Compared to what you had in the 60s, 10 milligram THC joint in the 60s. So one joint now is 10 times the strength that was in the 60s. A dab pen, 200 to 300 times, sorry, 20 to 30 times higher than it was in the 60s. So there is, and that's a huge difference. And that's just for smoking. I haven't got to edibles yet, which are a lot more dangerous. People think pot edibles are somehow safer. They're actually a lot more dangerous than smoking. So. This stuff is being recorded, guys, just so you know. All right, so marijuana, THC, affects the endocannabinoid system in the body. The endocannabinoid system, you can see different parts so it's all throughout the body. Every circle you see on here is part of the system. You have Cb1 receptors and Cb2 receptors. These are the places where you find them. So they're all throughout your major organs in the body, especially in your brain, but not just your brain. So it controls a lot of your body. Your stress response, inflammation, memory, mood, energy balance, immune function, appetite. That's some of the things. So it's a huge system, very important system in the body, and THC interferes with the system. And that's what makes people act differently with marijuana. So endocannabinoids in your body are sent out when things need to be back in balance. So this is naturally happening in your body, in the nervous system, when your body recognizes something's not right, whether it's your immune system, whether it's your temperature being too hot or too cold, or other things, the body recognizes that there's something that's out of whack, and endocannabinoids are sent out to fix that imbalance. So this isn't here cannabinoids, that should be endocannabinoids, but that's what your body makes naturally, and they're sent from one neuron to another neuron. So these go across the synapse. They should be going right here, but THC comes in and interferes with that. So THC from marijuana would interfere with that receptor. Cannabinoids can't go into that receptor, and your body can't function normally at that point. So THC interferes with your brain processing. You don't think as quickly with THC. And that's one of the things it does, among many other things. That's one of the major things that we recognize with THC, is that people can't think clearly. They can't react very quickly to things. Time to them usually slows down. 5 minutes to them might feel like an hour. So when they're high on marijuana, It might feel like that time is just stopped. And their brain just doesn't function like it normally does. Or they might have hallucinations. They might imagine things that aren't really there. So THC overwhelms the endocannabinoid system. By attaching to receptors, it blocks the receptor, it interferes the communication of neurons, and it doesn't function the way it's supposed to. It throws the entire system off balance. And so over time, THC changes the way your whole body works. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that. Okay, so so these are all the ways that it could change how your body works. The amygdala, as we learned about before, that's the part of the body that can cause you to fear things. And so with marijuana, you can feel very paranoid. So it's a common side effect of marijuana use is paranoia. You feel like people are out to get you. You feel like that you can't trust people around you, that they're going to hurt you. You might have panic attacks. The basal ganglia is impaired and you can't react as quickly to things. The brainstem changes. Now, there can be some good side effects, and one good side effect would be anti-nausea. And so some people would take marijuana medicinally to help with the nausea from chemotherapy. Now, there are better medications to take. You know, people say, well, about medical marijuana for cancer patients. The FDA does not approve marijuana for cancer patients because they said there are much better ways to treat nausea or to help you induce appetite. Those would be the two things that they would use that for, to help with nausea or to increase appetite. But there are better ways to do those things.
Does it help with pain relief?
Help with what?
Pain relief?
Pain relief, it can, but there are better ways to relieve pain than marijuana. We have much better medications to use. So some people do use it for pain relief, like for migraine, for example, but we have much better ways to relieve pain than marijuana. So there is no approved use for marijuana by the FDA because there are many other ways that you can, all the bad side effects of marijuana doesn't outweigh the good effects. Impaired coordination in your cerebellum. Hippocampus, you can't make new memories. You forget, you have blackouts and you forget what's happened. Increased appetite in your hypothalamus. Altered thinking and judgment and sensation. And so some people take marijuana because they see more colors. The world is brighter to them. They hear things that they normally hear. Music sounds more beautiful to them. So they just feel more deeply with marijuana. And one reason why is because of the neocortex that changes. Euphoria, feeling good. And then altered pain sensitivity in the spinal cord. So, you know, people take it for the good effects, but there are a lot of bad effects as well. And the bad effects far outweigh the good effects. Now, marijuana addiction is a real thing. People think it's not. I mean, you hear about it in the media, I'm sure amongst a lot of people that you talk to. I'm sure you've heard people say that you can't get addicted to marijuana, but that's not true. You can. Addiction is anything that if you remove that thing, you feel awful and you want to have that again. It's hard to function without it. And marijuana is definitely in that category. People who take marijuana tend to take it every single day. Most marijuana users are daily users. And if they stop taking it, they start to rage. One common effect of not taking marijuana is feeling raging emotions. You can't control. You feel violent. You feel upset. You feel angry. You are in pain. So it's very hard to get off marijuana. It's just as hard as it is to quit smoking. 1 in 6 people who take marijuana once get addicted to marijuana. And every year, 120,000 people go into treatment for marijuana addiction. So even though it's not widely talked about, addiction is a real thing for marijuana. THC use does impair your ability to do well in sports. It impacts your coordination. It makes it harder to perform as well in sports and also in school. It impairs your memory. It also impairs your sense of motivation. It's hard to be motivated to do things with marijuana. A lot of people who take marijuana drop out of high school or college. You are 2/3 more likely to drop out of high school if you take marijuana when you're under 17. Anyone who tries it in their teens just once, 2.3 times more likely to drop out of high school and never finish high school. So, and that has to do, again, with motivation. Marijuana changes your motivation. and it makes it harder to remember things and want to learn. People who use marijuana are more prone to depression and anxiety. And again, for those who weren't here, you can paraphrase what I'm saying on these notes. You have to write down word for word. You can just get the main idea from what I'm saying on these ones. And I will put these on YouTube, and also I can give you the notes as well for you to look at.
You might get canceled, Miss Holly.
Yeah, no, I'm not really worried about that. I mean, I'm at Faustina, so. Yeah. I know. Yeah, I think I got 20. Yeah. Suicide is also a lot more common with marijuana use. 50% more likely to commit suicide, or sorry, to think about suicide. 3.5 times likely to try to commit suicide. So another common side effect is psychosis, losing touch with reality, not knowing what's real and what's not. So people who take marijuana every day, 3 times more likely to think something that's not true, either to have a delusion or to see things that aren't real, to feel like people are out to get them, that people are trying to murder them, things like that. That's psychotic episodes. And it increases if it's a higher potency THC. So if you're using a dab pen, for example, then it gets even higher.
What part of the brain is it?
Oh, all parts of the brain. So I think you might have missed that, but I can give this down to you later. But this shows you all the parts that are affected.
Okay.
So these are all the parts in your brain that are impacted by marijuana. And those are just the major parts. I mean, really, it affects all your body, but these are some of those major parts that make a huge difference in how you feel and act. So it impacts your whole endocannabinoid system, which affects your whole body. Especially if you take this at young, because up until age 25, your brain's still developing. And so your brain is not finished developing until you're 25 years old. So if you take it before 25, you're going to have lifelong impacts to the brain and how it's functioning. So it makes your brain get smaller. It shrinks your memory, learning, and emotional centers.
You just taking it once?
Taking it once is not going to have the impact on the brain, but it's his daily users. So there's people who take it every day. But once you start marijuana, you're almost always gonna be a daily user. People who start taking marijuana, that they get to the point where it's a frequent thing. It's not just once per year. It's often. So the parts, you see your brain basically just atrophies and gets smaller. It's harder to learn. It's harder to have memories. Strokes also increase. So strokes would be a blood clot in the brain. It increases your chance of getting a stroke by 2.5 times. Infertility is a big concern too, testicular cancer. And so it decreases sperm count. It increases cancer. If you smoke marijuana, you get lung cancer too. But besides that, you also get ovarian cancer, testicular cancer. Interferes with sperm production and ovulation. So it causes infertility for both men and for women. Heart attacks are very common with marijuana, especially the first time you try marijuana. But with an hour of smoking pot, you're 3 times more likely to have a heart attack than without smoking. Or to be hospitalized with arrhythmia, which is a regular heartbeat. And so your heart attack just increases, but also just having a heart that doesn't beat properly also. There's a lot more tar in joints than there is in a cigarette because there's no filter on the joint. So you have 3 to 5 times more tar in a joint than you have in a cigarette. And if you use hookah, hookah is like hundreds of times more. Like if you have an hour-long hookah session, that's about 100, 200 cigarettes. that you've smoked in an hour. Because that's the tar that builds up. Yeah. I mean, so it's like smoking 100 cigarettes, and if you use it for an hour. Yeah.
See, that's a good idea.
Our science teacher said it was okay.
How did I say that?
I did not want
Yeah,
to.
I don't. Where did I say it was okay to do that? I don't really. Well.
Strawberry?
Wait, so does that mean that makes blood clots and stuff more likely too?
For what? For hookah? No, hookah. It's the tar that builds up that I was talking about.
In your
Yeah.
lungs, not anywhere else?
I mean, it definitely, smoking anything is going to increase your chance of stroke. So no matter what you smoke, you're going to have more chance of getting blood clots.
What about like a blood clot or in the heart?
Yeah, so that you definitely are more prone to that. Smoking anything, no matter what it is,
Okay.
you're more prone to blood clots and heart attacks. Marijuana stays in your fat for a long time. So it can take weeks. If you are a chronic marijuana smoker, it can take weeks or even months to clear out your system. So it can stay in your fat for a very long time. Now, if you just take it once, it can clear out in a couple of days. But if you take it for chronic every day for a while, it stays in for a very long time in your body. Mental illness is increasing, and a lot of it is correlated to marijuana use. So in 2017, 7.5% of young adults ages 18 to 25 met the criteria for serious mental illness. So this would be things like schizophrenia, hearing voices, seeing things that aren't real, bipolar disorder. So this is not depression that you can treat with the pill. This is something that's more serious. It's these things that really debilitate you, that keep you in bed, that keep you from functioning properly. That's double the rate in 2008 or 2008. It's the same trend in other countries that legalize marijuana. So you can look at Norway, Denmark, places where it's legal. It's the same trend that we're seeing. We are seeing a huge spike in mental illness, serious mental illness, which seems to correlate with marijuana use. They looked at a study in Australia, people who committed homicide, people who murdered somebody during a psychotic episode. So these are people who became psychotic and killed somebody. And of the 88 people that they looked at, most believe they were in danger from the victim. So most people killed because they thought the victim was going to hurt them. So this could be a stranger on the side of the road, but they thought this was a person who was going to hurt them. So they hurt them back. Almost 2/3 of them had been using marijuana. And that was more than alcohol and amphetamines combined. So the common factor in this was marijuana use. So if you are prone to schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, psychosis, and you don't take marijuana, most of the time you can control those impulses. But if you take marijuana, it makes the psychosis be very strong to the point where you can't control it. And people can do very violent things on marijuana. People think, they think of the idea of a stoner on his couch eating Cheetos. And that can happen, but that's not always what happens. There's also the one that we don't hear about as often, where it's the psychotic episodes, where people panic and just start to go in rages. And there are reports of people who will tear up their house, who will just, punch holes in their walls, rip out their furniture, punch the people in their house, bash out windows, throw themselves out of the window, and this is when they're high on marijuana. But we don't have that image in our heads of that happening. But that is definitely one part of marijuana use, is the rage, psychosis that goes along with it. So when it's smoked, the peak levels of THC happen very quickly in 3 to 10 minutes. But if you eat marijuana, in brownies or whatever else they have, it takes a lot longer, 1 to 3 hours. And so because it takes so long to feel the effects, people don't think it's working. They take more than they're supposed to. It's very easy to overdose when it's eaten. So we'll stop here for today. Well, it doesn't last longer, but it takes longer for it to take effect.